Hey guys! In this homework help video, I'm going to walk you through how to solve each of the problems on the homework. I'm not going to complete the calculations, but I am going to remind you of the formulas and give you some tips and tricks for each problem. So if you're only concerned with a couple of problems, feel free to skip through this video to the part that is relevant for you. So our first problem, we have a trapezoidal prism. Now I know it's a trapezoidal prism because the bases should be congruent to each other. And the only shapes that are going to be congruent to each other in this prism are this trapezoid in front and that trapezoid in the back. If I was looking at this, the rectangles on the top and the bottom, they are not congruent, so they can't be the bases. So if we want to calculate volume, we know our formula is volume is BH and surface area is 2B plus pH. So we're going to need to know the height of our prism, we're going to need to know the area of the base, and you're going to need to know the perimeter of the base. And remember that our base is our trapezoid. So I want to remind you the height of the prism is the distance between the bases. So I'm going to look for which segment has a measurement that's connecting my two bases. And I see that this edge right here is the 15, and it is connecting this trapezoid to this trapezoid. They also could have labeled this 15 or this 15 or this segment down here. So I know that my height is going to be 15 feet. Then I need to calculate the area and the perimeter of the base. To do that, I might even draw the base separately so that I can know where all the measurements they give me are. And you can calculate the height of, or the area and the perimeter of a trapezoid. I want to remind you when you're calculating the area of the trapezoid, this is its height because this is the one that's perpendicular to the base. That is not the height. We're actually only going to use the 20 for the perimeter. So you can calculate the area of the trapezoid and the perimeter of the trapezoid, and then just substitute those values into your formula. Remember that you need to have units in your final answer, so your units should be cubic feet for volume and square feet for area. Moving on to the next problem, we have a cylinder that we need to calculate the volume and the surface area of. So once again, I need to know my height, I need to know the area of the base, and the perimeter of the base. Since it's a cylinder, I know that my area of the base, I'm going to need pi r squared, and perimeter, I'm going to need 2 pi r. Those are the formulas for area of, and perimeter of a circle. But they don't give me the radius. Instead, they give me this diagonal. So what we are going to do is actually create this right triangle. And if you notice, this edge right here is going to be our diameter. So you can use Pythagorean theorem. So you're going to use Pythagorean theorem to calculate the diameter. And then once you know your diameter, you can calculate the radius and get your base and your perimeter. Now, the other thing is which of these is going to be the height of our cylinder. Remember that height is always, so the height of a prism is perpendicular to the bases. Even in an oblique prism, the height is still going to be perpendicular, so you're going to have to find that vertical. So I know that the height is going to be 32 because the 40 is not, that 40 millimeter segment is not perpendicular to the base. So we know our height is 32 millimeters. And once you have your diameter, you can substitute it into these formulas and calculate your volume and surface area. Remember, volume is BH and surface area is 2B plus pH. For our next problem, we have another cylinder, but you notice that part of it is shaded. So you are going to calculate the volume of the shaded region. And so our formulas are still going to be the same. But now the base that you're calculating the area of is going to be a sector. And the perimeter that you will need is going to be the perimeter of that sector. The height, this is still going to be that vertical height, but you're going to have to use that arc length and sector area that you learned before. So to calculate B, you're going to use the sector area for that 100 degree sector. So you're just going to calculate the area. We know the radius of this circle is 2 centimeters. So then you can do sector area formula. Remember that our sector area formula is x over 360 times pi r squared. And so you can, and I'll just delete this so that you can see, yeah, it's a 100-degree sector. And so you can calculate the area of it, and that will be B. Now the perimeter is a little bit different because if you calculate the perimeter with just the arc length, then you're only going to have this outside portion of the perimeter. But that's going to ignore this rectangle here and then the rectangle that you can't really see in the back. So to get the whole, to get all of those lateral faces, you're going to need all of the perimeter. So the perimeter, you're going to do the arc length for that 100-degree sector plus 2 radii. Because you need this segment here, which will be 2 centimeters, and this segment here, which will be 2 centimeters. So we have a 2 and a 2. And then this arc length, you're going to use, so it's x over 360 times 2 pi r. So that's our arc length plus 2r to get those other 2 segments. So once you calculate the arc length as your perimeter and the sector area as your base, you're going to be able to plug all those values in to find your volume and your surface area. So that's why I wanted to give you guys some explanation here to show you that you're using those arc length and sector area formulas, but that's still going to give you that you can input them into our normal volume and surface area formulas. The final problem we are going to go over is this rectangular prism. And I want to remind you that volume of a rectangular prism is just length times width times height. So if you can get the length, the width, or I guess that's not really the length, you might call this one the length, this one the width, and this one the height, something like that. As long as you can get those 3 edges or the equivalent of them, then you will have all of these segments that you need. So and then for surface area, you could just calculate all of the rectangles, or you could do your 2b plus ph, or you could do 2 length width plus 2 width height plus 2 length height. Really, whatever, those are all going to give you the same thing, so I can say or. But let's look at the measurements that they give us. So they tell us that BC is 6. So BC is 6, so I know the width is 6 right away. Then they tell me that AC is 3 root 5, and AE is the square root of 13. So what I'm going to want to do is I need this segment right here to get the height, and then I need this segment right here to get the length. So I am going to use Pythagorean theorem twice. First, we're going to do AB squared. Let me write it as an equation. So we're going to do AB squared plus 6 squared equals 3 root 5 squared. And we can solve that to get AB. Then you could do AB squared plus BE squared equals the square root of 13 squared. And since you'll already know AB, you'll be able to just plug that number in. And that will give you AB is going to be our height and BE will be our length. And then once you have that, you can calculate your volume and your surface area. So it looks a little bit weird, but all it is going to be Pythagorean theorem twice, and then you can plug in your values to volume and surface area. And that is a short walkthrough for how to solve every problem on your homework worksheet. As always, you can send me remind messages or emails to ask any questions, and good luck this week, guys.